automation is one of my favorite topics. Although for the audience that joins me all the time, manufacturing is one of my favorite topics, and I love automation as a piece of that. Today, we are honored to have my friend Dick on camera with FANUC to talk about automation as a whole, where it can be implemented, how it can be utilized, how it can best benefit you, how it can compete on a global scale, reduce this labor shortage, or at least talk more about it, and how automation can help with that, and the main purpose of integrators and how profound they can be when it comes to implementing in your shop correctly, so you're not wasting money before diving into it to begin with. Dick, I'm happy to have you here. I'm so excited to learn more. Let's go high level to start. Automation as a whole, the purpose, the benefits, how people can dive in.
Well, before we get started on that, I do want to say thank you for having me on this show. You're kind of a legend. The Gunn show, I see you on LinkedIn and social media all the time.
Thank you so much.
Always enjoy your work, so thanks for having me a part of this. In terms of automation and what it can do for manufacturers, there's so many benefits in terms of really freeing up human resources to perform higher value-added tasks. You know, there's the classic dangerous, difficult, dirty, delicate, I call them the 4Ds, that robots in particular are good at. So the robots can take care of that kind of heavy lifting sorts of activities and free up valuable human capital to be applied elsewhere in the business and add to the manufacturing process. So there's a huge benefit right there in terms of kind of unleashing human potential. The other thing that really became very obvious during the pandemic was how challenging it can be to get qualified people to keep a manufacturing operation running. I remember at the height of the pandemic, I was actually at a conference, which I can't believe they held at the time.
At the height of the pandemic.
At the height of the pandemic.
Of course you were.
But I happened to sit across the table from a plant manager who said, I've got 7 lines in my plant, and every day I come to the plant and decide which 3 I'm not gonna run. Whew. And so think about the impact on the top line. Assuming that he can sell everything he could make, think about the impact of just not having the available labor to keep that plant in operation. So, so there's all kinds of benefits to automation and the contributions it can make to a really world-class manufacturing process.
Dick, I have you on camera, which I'm very happy to have, and I'm going to try and pick your brain a little bit, because even though you and I and some of our great partners and integrators, and certainly the people walking around this explosive show at the moment, understand the world of automation, or at least grasping the idea that it's necessary to compete globally and to do more within our shops. But where do you think some of the hesitation still lies in the world of automation? Because let's be fair, we're in one hall at the McCormick Center. There are other shows that can be and are sometimes much grander, and we want this one to be equally as recognized. So when we think about the growth of automation and how important automation is, I also want to address the folks out there who are still kind of hesitant, and I want to know why.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, really. I think that a lot of times it's hard to pick that first application. You know, they see multiple needs, they have multiple pain points. It's like, which one do we tackle first? Which one is inbounds technically? Where can we have a success that we can build upon? So there's kind of that anxiety about, do I make that first choice? And to customers like that, I say, just get in and do something. Pick something and get a good wingman. And we're going to talk about integrators in just a little bit. Have that wingman and a good integrator to take you through the process. So I think that's a big part of it. Another big part of it that we're all working really hard on is workforce preparedness.
Yes.
So workforce development. So, we already talked about how great robots are, how great automation is, but if you would kind of impose that on a workforce that's not been empowered to embrace it, and they haven't been well trained, and they don't feel like they're in a position to be successful, that can be a negative. So we really have to work hard on making them comfortable that they'll be able to be successful with the automation once it's in place, and then that just snowballs and becomes more success. And then the last thing is, and this is on manufacturers like ourselves and on integrators, is we've got to continue to work really hard in terms of making the technology accessible. That's a really heavy word. That means a lot of things. It means ease of use. It means user-friendly. It means the things I just talked about workforce preparedness. We really have to make it accessible. It's a key word, and that's on all of us on the automation side to make our customers comfortable and feel like they can be successful with the technology.
A couple of things. Accessible might be a four-syllable word, but it's profound when we're talking about it here.
It is.
Secondly, quick shout out to your team and your team with Joe as well. Over 1,800 schools that FANUC is educating to keep that workforce development going. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Something I found to be kind of great is, you know, the fact that automation is also logistically making sense as well. And we won't go into too many details about that, but I've heard so many customer testimonials about, I had 15 areas of work, I've now reduced to 2 in one location, and there's just great added benefits to that. But the segue, as you've already mentioned, is how can I get to that point where I buy a robot or I buy a cobot and it's not just in the corner of my facility not being used because I didn't find the right partner. I didn't find the right integrator. You guys, we know the yellow everywhere. Everywhere you go, it's yellow. And it's very much, oh, FANUC, yeah, we know those guys. They're all over the world. But integrators are so very important as a part of your growth, as a part of the overall understanding. Can we talk about that importance? Because there is certainly an audience right now that looks at FANUC and goes, I would love to, I just don't know more. And integrators help with all of those questions that people might have.
That's exactly right. And you know, our company, our origins back in the early 80s were heavily automotive. And that's a very mature market at this point. What you and I are talking about are trying to get some of those first-time users and new users. And so we've organized for the past 25 years to try and reach those new customers in non-automotive industries in particular. And it started with our network of regional offices that we established to get close to the customer. Because we're in Detroit, not every customer aspires to visit Detroit, especially in
automotive
January.
World though, isn't it?
Yeah. So we recognize that. And then that foray into the non-automotive space really highlighted right away that the non-automotive domain is just so diverse. You know, you can go from pharmaceutical to aerospace to you know, med device, all over the place. And we couldn't do all that ourselves. And so we needed to align with the partners in our integrator network who have they know their own customers, they know the customers' processes, they have the customer relationships, and they can take our technology and use it as kind of the core to build an automation solution for the end user. So integrators are absolutely critical. When it comes to selecting an integrator, that's actually we talk about this frequently in terms of there are multiple criteria that an end user might have to select an integrator, and they may weigh them all differently. Is the integrator close by? Do they have a process expertise I really need? Do they have a culture that I like? You know, if you deal with an integrator that's a 10-man shop, that's going to be a different experience from dealing with a 200-man operation, 200-person operation. So we always encourage the end users to think about those factors, weigh them for themselves, and that should lead them right to the integrator that can help them be successful. Again, the value of the integrator is understanding their process, kind of shepherding them through some of the system considerations like safety. Safety is a really big thing that our integrators bring to the table, that to keep personnel, and that gets at that accessibility, right? Customers comfortable with it if they feel safe around it. So that's a major contribution of an integrator. They can also contribute to that workforce development all the way through the process of developing a project, identifying a project. Identify those stakeholders really early on and get them engaged so that when the equipment shows up on the floor, it's like an old friend. They already know it, they're ready to go to work with it, and they're ready to be successul with it.
Dick, you just told me a whole lot of things that I really enjoyed and absorbed, but did you also just tell me 1 + 1 = 3?
Well, you know, I'm an engineer, but I wasn't that good at math.
Dick, it has been an absolutely honor working with. It's been a true pleasure for me. One of my great gifts of my job is learning from folks like you, working with people like FANUC, learning this type of technology. I hope this has been beneficial for you guys as well, because this is something we all need to embrace. For those of us who are professionals, catching up with the latest and greatest technology is here. To those of us just dipping our toes in, and even those of us who are still scared. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about this. That's why legends like Dick jump on camera with us to share it. So it is a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
It is an honor.
It really
Thank you
is.
so much.
Yeah, I'm glad I had the opportunity. Thanks, Tony.